My sister asked me to transfer $9,000 to her. When I refused, she rolled her eyes and said loudly, "Figures, you've always been selfish." I stayed calm. Then I opened my notebook and read something that made her sink into her chair. We were standing in my kitchen in Asheville. It was the Sunday after Thanksgiving, and the air still smelled faintly of cinnamon, turkey, and the burning candle I forgot to blow out the night before. My sister, Talia, leaned against the counter holding her coffee like it weighed more than her conscience. "I need you to send me $9,000, she said, without even softening her tone. That's how it began. No preface, no easing into it. Just $9,000, like she was asking for a cup of milk. I looked at her, waiting for a hint of irony or maybe a nervous chuckle. Nothing. Just the worn-down confidence of someone who had leaned too long on the people around her and expected them to keep standing. When I said I couldn't do it, she looked straight through me and let out a theatrical sigh. Her eyes rolled as if rehearsed. "Figures," she said, loudly enough for her two kids to hear. "You've always been selfish." I didn't flinch. Didn't raise my voice or try to defend myself. I just walked to my desk, pulled out an old notebook, and turned to a marked page. Then I started reading. "I suppose to understand how we got here, you need to know what led up to it. I'm 47 now, divorced, and living a quiet life in the home I bought after my marriage fell apart. My ex-husband, Richard, and I had been together for 15 years, and toward the end, it was like living with a ghost who still expected dinner on the table. He stopped seeing me long before he actually left. Talia is my younger sister, 43, married to Marcus, 2 kids, Brielle and James. They live in Raleigh. Talia's always had this aura of glamour and disarray. She talks fast, moves fast, and falls apart even faster. But growing up, we were close. We shared a room until I left for college. We whispered secrets in the dark, stuck together during our parents' fights, and spent summers planning our imaginary futures, hers always grander than mine. But adulthood changed that. Somewhere between her second credit card and her first eviction, I became the stable one. The one who came home when Dad had his first heart attack. The one who moved back when Mom started showing signs of Parkinson's. I managed the doctors, the finances, the lawyers, the hospice decisions. Talia? She posted tributes on Facebook and sent flowers with glitter cards. I never asked her to help. Not really. I just hoped she would offer. Dad passed quickly suddenly, like he always said he'd go. "I'll die with my shoes on," he used to joke. And he did, in the garden, pruning roses. It was Talia who called me, sobbing. I drove down from Asheville that night while she stayed home to prepare the kids. I ended up handling the funeral arrangements, the paperwork, the will. The cost of the funeral was $6,750. Talia said she couldn't chip in because they had just gotten back from Cancun, and Marcus's store had a bad quarter. I didn't push. Then came Mom's decline. Parkinson's crept in slowly, then all at once. She couldn't drive. Then she couldn't write. Then she couldn't swallow. I quit my job and took on remote freelance work. I brought her to Asheville. I turned my guest room into a full-time care unit. Talia visited twice that year. She said the kids had school, Marcus had stress, she had a lot going on. I fed Mom, bathed her, and managed her medications. Some nights, I sat beside her for hours just to watch her breathe. After she passed, there was barely enough left to cover the bills. Whatever inheritance Talia imagined had been spent keeping our mother alive with dignity. So when she asked me for $9,000, it wasn't just the money. It was everything. It was every doctor's appointment I drove to alone. Every night I lay awake listening for Mom's breathing. Every funeral detail I sorted while she tagged beach selfies. She never paid me back for the estate lawyer fees. She never took over for one full weekend to give me a break. She never reimbursed me for a single package of incontinence pads, though she promised she would. I had written it all down. Not out of spite, not at first. I just needed to remember the truth, to stay sane. Over time, the notebook became my quiet therapist. A ledger of responsibility. Proof that I wasn't crazy or bitter, just tired. So when she called me selfish, I didn't yell. I simply retrieved the notebook. And read. I stayed with Mom for 184 nights last year. You visited 12 times. Talia looked up, her mouth slightly open. I paid over $13,000 out of pocket for her care. You didn't send a dime. The words hung in the air. I didn't raise my voice, didn't accuse, just read. Just facts. You said you'd take over once a month. You came twice. You said we'd split lawyer fees. I paid for all of it. The kids had fallen silent in the living room. Even Brielle, who's usually glued to her iPad, was staring. I turned to the last page, where I'd written a summary. You've called me selfish, cold, distant. But every time, I still showed up. I didn't show up for you. I showed up for Mom. For Dad. For the memory of the girl I used to share a room with. I looked up then. Her face was pale. Her mouth was closed now. No eye roll. No flippant comment. Just a woman slowly realizing that maybe, just maybe, she was the one who had been selfish. She sat down slowly on the chair near the counter, as if her legs had finally caught up with the weight of the moment. Her coffee cup was still in her hand, but untouched now, the steam curling upward unnoticed. There was a long silence. I didn't feel the need to fill it. I'd said what I needed to say, not with anger, not with vengeance, but with facts. That's the thing about keeping records. When people rewrite history, you can gently or not so gently hand them the truth. I didn't know it was all like that, she finally muttered. I gave a small nod, but didn't respond. Because that wasn't true. She did know. She just didn't look. It was easier not to. I could see her trying to decide how to respond, whether to get defensive, whether to cry, whether to spin this into another story where she was the misunderstood little sister. But none of those roles were landing the way they usually did. Her kids didn't say anything, either. James had curled up in the corner with a coloring book, though he wasn't coloring. Brielle just stared, trying to make sense of a world where maybe Mom wasn't always right, and Aunt Tess wasn't the villain she'd probably been painted as during quiet car rides. The notebook sat on the table between us, still open. The weight of it, not just physical, but symbolic, sat heavy in the room. Talia started, but her voice cracked. She took a breath. I guess I thought you were fine. Like, you always handled everything. You didn't ask for help. I figured you had it under control. I didn't let myself laugh, though part of me wanted to. Of course she thought that. Because I made it easy. I didn't fall apart in public. I didn't post vague quotes about being overwhelmed. I just handled it. Quietly. But competence doesn't mean invincibility. And silence doesn't mean consent. You never asked if I wanted to handle it, I said quietly. You just assumed I would. And I did. But that doesn't mean it didn't cost me. She looked away then, her eyes landing on a photo of our parents I kept on a small side table. It was one of the last ones we had of them together, taken at a park near Lake Junaluska, during one of the rare moments Mom could still walk unaided and Dad wasn't coughing every 10 minutes. They looked happy. Whole. She whispered, I miss them. I nodded again. So do I. Another pause stretched between us. Not uncomfortable, just full, like the house was breathing for us when we couldn't. After a while, she finally asked, why did you keep all that? I hesitated. Then told her the truth. At first, I started writing things down just to stay organized: medical info, bills, appointments. Then it became emotional. It was the only way I could keep track of what was real. You'd say you'd help, then disappear. I'd second-guess myself, wondering if I was exaggerating. But I wasn't. Her eyes welled with tears, but still she didn't cry. Talia always saved her tears for when there was an audience. Maybe that was changing. Or maybe she realized this wasn't a scene to perform in. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said. I know, I replied. But you did. Another silence. This one tinged with something closer to understanding. Later that afternoon, while the kids napped in the guest room and I cleaned up the remnants of the weekend, she sat quietly at the dining table. She looked through old photo albums I'd left out not because I wanted to reminisce, but because I hadn't gotten around to putting them away after Mom died. She lingered over a photo of us as kids, me in a red jacket, her with a popsicle-stained face. We were laughing about something off camera. Do you ever miss that? She asked. All the time, I said. I don't know how we got so far apart, she added. I didn't either. Or maybe I did, but I didn't want to dig into it just yet. There's a time for archaeology, and this wasn't it. She didn't bring up the $9,000 again. Dinner was quiet. I reheated leftovers, and the kids perked up when I set out apple pie for dessert. Talia offered to help clean up, which surprised me. She didn't say much, but I could see the gears turning. Maybe guilt, maybe discomfort. Maybe recognition. When she hugged me goodbye the next morning, it was tighter than usual. Not dramatic, not one of those fake movie hugs where people cry into each other's hair, but real. Solid. Thanks for letting us come, she said. Of course, I replied, and I meant it, even if I didn't say more. She opened the car door, then paused. I'll send you something later. A letter or something. I owe you that. I gave her a small smile. I didn't say she owed me anything. But maybe she owed herself the truth. The house felt especially quiet after they left. Too quiet. I walked back into the kitchen, found the green notebook still sitting there, and closed it gently. I didn't put it away just yet. I wasn't ready. A few days passed. I didn't hear from her. I wasn't expecting a parade or a dramatic apology. Honestly, I wasn't sure what I expected. Maybe nothing. That moment at the table when I opened the notebook had felt final in a way. Like all the years of imbalance had finally tipped into something visible, undeniable. And now, we were just sitting in the aftermath, waiting to see what would settle. Then, a week later, a letter arrived. A real letter. Handwritten. In her handwriting loopy, rushed, like she was always racing against her own thoughts. The return address was hers, and I stared at it for a moment before opening it. I sat down at my kitchen table, in the same spot where she had accused me of being selfish, and read. Tess, I've written and torn this up a few times. I still don't know if I'm saying the right thing. I guess I'm just sorry. I know that doesn't fix it, but I want to start there. I've told myself for years that you were the strong one, so I didn't have to face the fact that I left you alone with everything. You didn't ask for that, and I shouldn't have expected it. I think I needed you to be the one who had it together so I could keep being the mess. And I think, deep down, I knew you were doing more than I gave you credit for, but I didn't want to admit that, because then I'd have to admit how little I was doing. Marcus and I are trying to sort a lot out right now. I'm seeing a counselor. And I told her about the notebook. She said it probably saved our relationship. Funny, right? A notebook. I don't expect you to forget everything. But I want to find a way back to whatever we used to be. I miss my sister. Talia, I didn't cry. Not because it didn't move me, but because part of me had been waiting years for even a hint of acknowledgement. And when it finally came, it didn't break me. It just made space for something else, maybe relief, maybe. Or the quiet beginning of forgiveness. I didn't write back immediately. I let it sit on the table for a few days. Every time I passed by, I reread a sentence or two. Not out of disbelief, but to remind myself that she had, for once, taken the time to say something real. About a month later, she called. No preamble. No dramatic build-up. Just her voice on the other end of the line on a quiet Wednesday morning while I was sorting laundry. Hey. Got a minute? I said yes, even though I didn't. Because I could tell she needed it. She talked about Marcus, how the therapy sessions were hard, how the gambling had left more damage than she realized. How she'd started looking for part-time work now that the kids were in school. She sounded tired, but different. Less frantic. Less rehearsed. Then she said something I didn't expect. I don't want your money, Tess. I never really did. I just wanted to feel like I could still ask you for help and you'd be there. But I was asking the wrong way. And for the wrong reasons. That landed. Not because it fixed anything. But because it was honest. And finally, she was starting to see the difference between being supported and being enabled. Around the same time, I started going through Mom's old boxes. I hadn't touched most of them since she passed. They'd been sitting in the attic, labeled in her careful cursive, kitchen tools, photos 1970s, Tess plus Talia childhood. I opened that last one on a rainy afternoon. Inside were drawings we made as kids, report cards, some terrible crayon portraits we'd made of each other. There were also letters. Real ones. Notes we wrote when we were grounded, or mad, or planning secret birthday surprises. And one in particular stood out. It was from me to her. Dated 1993. I was 15, she was 11. Talia, one day when we're old, I hope we don't fight like other sisters. I hope we live close to each other, or at least talk every day. Even when you're annoying, which is often, you're my favorite person in the world. So don't forget that. Not ever. Tess, I held that letter in my hands for a long time. It didn't undo everything, but it reminded me who we once were. And who we might still be, if we kept showing up. Even messily. Even imperfectly. Talia came to visit again in February. No kids, no drama. Just her, with an overnight bag and a quiet sort of nervous energy. She didn't ask for anything. She offered to make dinner, actually. It was just spaghetti, and she overcooked the noodles, but I didn't care. She set the table while I poured the wine. It was the first time I felt like we were on level ground again. She saw the notebook on my shelf, not open, but not hidden either. Still got that thing? She asked, half smiling. I do, I said. It helps me remember what's real. She nodded. Fair enough. She didn't ask to see it again. And I didn't offer. Because the notebook wasn't a weapon. It was a boundary. A history. And now, it was also a symbol of what we'd survived. She stayed for 2 days. We talked about Mom. About Dad. About the parts of our childhood that were beautiful and the parts we'd only just started unpacking. She told me more about her counseling. About how hard it was, facing the parts of yourself you've avoided for decades. I didn't think it would feel like grief, she said. But that's exactly what it feels like. Like mourning the person I thought I was. That resonated. Maybe because I'd done my own version of that after the divorce. After Mom died. After the years I spent putting myself second in the name of duty, thinking it made me good instead of just burned out. We didn't fix everything. But we started laying bricks. Not a bridge yet, more like a foundation. Something that might, with time, support the weight of a rebuilt relationship. We still didn't talk every day. But we talked. Real conversations, not obligation-filled check-ins. And when she called now, it wasn't to ask for anything. It was to tell me how her day went, or to ask how mine did. Once, she sent me a photo of a chicken pot pie she made from scratch, captioned, Mom's recipe. Didn't burn it. That made me laugh out loud. The photo now lives in my fridge. Right next to a decades-old Polaroid of 2 little girls in matching pink raincoats, holding hands in a muddy backyard. Talia and me. Before the years pulled us apart. Before I became the one who always had to be strong. Before notebooks and funerals and final conversations. Just 2 sisters. Spring rolled around slowly that year, tugging winter away one guest at a time. Life became calmer in a way I hadn't expected. I didn't feel lighter overnight, but I started catching myself smiling at small things again. A quiet Saturday. An email from an old friend. The scent of coffee in a clean kitchen. I had space not just in my house, but in my mind. Talia kept in touch, but something had shifted. She didn't pretend things were perfect anymore. She didn't sugarcoat the hard stuff. And she certainly didn't ask me for money again. But then came the text. Hey. I hate to bring this up. But can we talk about the house? She meant our parents' house in Charlotte. The one that had been sitting vacant since Mom passed. I hadn't pushed to sell it right away, part grief, part fatigue. I managed the upkeep, paid the taxes, and handled the occasional maintenance issue. Talia had shown zero interest in any of it until now. I called her. She picked up quickly, already halfway into her pitch. So, Marcus and I are just thinking about moving. His business is stabilizing, and I'd love to get the kids into a better school district. Charlotte makes sense. I waited. She continued, I was wondering if maybe we could keep the house and the family. Like, you could sign your half over to me. You're not using it, and you've said before you didn't want to deal with renting or selling. I almost laughed. She was careful not to use the word gift. But that's exactly what it was. She wanted the house. Free and clear. After everything. I stayed quiet for a moment. Talia, I said, calmly. Do you know how much money I've spent keeping that house up for the last 3 years? She hesitated. I mean, some. You mentioned the taxes once. Over $18,000, I replied. Repairs. Property taxes. Lawn care. Security. Utilities. I've handled every invoice, every inspection, every late notice when a pipe burst or a circuit blew. You've never even asked. There was silence on the line. She finally said, I didn't know it was that much. That's the problem, Talia. You never know because you never look. Another pause. I'm not signing anything over, I continued. But I'll make you a deal. If you want the house, buy me out. Fair market value. We'll split the closing costs. No family discounts, no IOUs. A clean transaction. You want me to buy half the house? I nodded even though she couldn't see me. Yes. That's how grown-ups do business. And frankly, it's the only way I do things now. She didn't argue. She couldn't. She'd finally learned that my silence didn't mean weakness, it meant patience. And I'd had years to prepare for this moment. In the end, she didn't buy the house. She couldn't afford it. I sold it a few months later to a young couple who wanted to start a family in the same neighborhood we grew up in. I handled the sale, the paperwork, the legal transfers, and I kept every cent. It wasn't just about the money. It was about principle. About the satisfaction of not folding. About drawing a line and not only holding it, but painting it in bright red and daring her to cross it again. She didn't. That fall, I took a trip to Maine, a place I'd always dreamed of visiting but never had the time or money for. Bar Harbor in late September is pure magic. Cool air, lighthouses, boats rocking gently in the harbor. I hiked Acadia National Park. Ate lobster rolls on the pier. Took a writing class at a little art center in town. And I started a new notebook. Not a ledger. Not a list of wrongs. Just a collection of small, beautiful things. A waitress's kind smile. A breeze through the trees. The sound of the ocean at dawn. Because that's the thing about reclaiming your peace. When you stop carrying everyone else's weight, you start remembering your own worth. Talia and I talk every now and then. Our relationship is cautious but real. I send the kids birthday cards and books I think they'll like. She sends me updates from therapy and occasionally a bad joke she knows will make me roll my eyes. We're not what we were. We probably never will be. But I've stopped mourning the fantasy of a perfect sisterhood. What we have now is honest, and sometimes that's even better. And the best part? I don't feel guilty anymore. Not for saying no. Not for keeping records. Not for expecting more. That's the real revenge. Not rage. Not cruelty. Just peace. Earned, guarded, and kept.